On this episode of Resiweek, we talk consumer audio growth, warming your home with shades, and Access Network's new switches. All this and more on this episode of Resiweek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is Resiweek, episode 212. Check your ego.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Blackwire Design, the go-to distributor for the CI industry with an extensive product lineup backed by unmatched sales and system support.
and by
Just Add Power, the global leader in video over IP solutions with systems that give you easy installation, unmatched scalability, and outstanding performance.
Welcome to Resiweek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by my good friend, Jamie Breezemeister. She is the CEO, otherwise known as Boss Lady at Integration Controls. How are you, ma'am?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
You thought I was going to forget that, but it's in your show notes.
Boss ladies there all the time, huh?
And good to see you. And we also have John Clancy. He is the VP of Residential at Crestron. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Let's jump right in to a story that comes to us from CE Pro and Bob Archer. Research is suggesting that the demand for consumer audio products is growing. Future Source, a consumer tracker, is stating that audio products are continuing to grow as there is new interest in new generation hardware solutions. They do or are quite bullish on headphones, but we're not going to deal with that too much. Jimmy, I kind of want to start with you on this one. They're stating in this report that the home audio market is continuing to grow. It's got year-on-year increase of essentially 21%. Now, the concerning part for us is that hi-fi products are down 9%. But the category in general is up 21. When you look at this, when you read this report, how do home technology professionals go about trying to take advantage of those, dare I say, basics, those basic sales, those wireless speakers, those basic sound bars, all of those little products that can be great filler projects for an integration firm. How do you take advantage of these kind of numbers when you see 21% up?
Right. Well, I think advantage is in thinking long term and building a client base over time. I often wonder how we can get someone to buy into a hi-fi system if they've never experienced pretty good, somewhat easy to use, relatively okay, or mass marketed audio. I can imagine myself, if I were new and never knew anything about this industry, coming in to speak to integrators, seeing the thing that I see all the time versus the thing they're trying to sell me, outside of experiencing the difference. And of course, there's a price tag to that. I see that it kind of is a way to whet their palate, to warm them up to the future, to maybe baby step them into a bigger system or something a bit more high performing. So a suggestion I would say is to think longer term. Work on building the relationship. These kind of products, while they have a low margin, you can get in and get out and be done in a day. You don't have to tweak it. You don't have to stand around and listen to multiple demo sets. It's something that can be done relatively quickly. So filler work is pretty important. And I say go for it, but think with a longer term strategy instead of all about the bottom line and focusing, unless you choose to focus your entire business model on that.
Very good. I like that. John, as you scroll through the article, they specifically call it Dolby Atmos. Now, inside the channel, we've been super excited about Atmos for a while. If you've ever sat through a really good Atmos demo, it is phenomenal. But it's also, unless you have that demo, kind of hard to demo or experience. Is there value in HTPs specifically targeting like a technology as a sales tactic, as a marketing tactic, to go and revisit all those existing customers that you've done 5.1 for or 7.1 for and say, hey, you need to upgrade to Dolby Atmos?
Yeah, look, I think, and Jamie hit right on it. I think that gaining the confidence, right, is really the first portion of that long-term relationship, right? So especially if you're going back to upgrade existing customers, you have that relationship. I think audio has kind of, at least the convenience of audio, especially with our phones and streaming services and smart speakers, have spoiled us in a sense of building all off of convenience and not necessarily quality, right? So being able to demonstrate that firsthand and provide an end user who may not even be able to understand what you're talking about when it comes to Dolby Atmos or anything like that, for instance, is key, because what they don't know is really there, to try to really hurt them long term. It's what they don't understand. It's the convenience over quality, and when they hear quality for the first time, or they hear that Dolby Atmos demo for the first time, it is eye-opening. And I think that that whole principle of demonstrating that, or finding a way to demonstrate that, is absolutely something to build off.
Very good. All right, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today and Jeremy Glowacki. He is warming up his house with a certified window shade. As you read through the article, he kind of covers the start to finish of installing a shade that he got on a demo from Hunter Douglas, and how, using one of their temperature guides, he was able to measure that heat or cold temperature at the window, put on the shade, have a better idea of what that is doing from an insulation standpoint. John, I want to start with you on this. Window shades window coverings, window fashions have been something that the industry has been on and very excited about for quite a few years now. Crestron jumped into the shading game, I don't know, what, 5-6 years ago?
Almost 10. Yeah.
10. Gosh, 10. I was there when it debuted, and obviously I've been in the business a little too long because now I can't remember. But Firm 41. When you look at window fashions, when you look at shades, this is that perfect transitional product from a very technical product to a very fashion design oriented thing. When you're dealing with integrators that haven't jumped on board with this yet, how do you try to encourage them to go down the vein of window coverings?
Oh, well, yeah, look, so integrators are looking for more ways to make money all the time, right? Margins are getting cut in almost every other category, or every category possible. Their labor prices are getting questioned by every end user because the cable company or someone else is willing to come in and quote unquote sell a smart home system for a small monthly fee. So it's the new category option, another place to make money, but B, when we can describe it about, the number of windows in a home far exceed the number of televisions or the number of rooms you're going to have speakers in. And we start to use those numbers to guide them about, the profitability of selling motorized shades. Again, people are putting these or building these homes, and they're going to cover these windows with something, at least provide them an option or a solution that might make sense for them. So whether you're just pre-wiring for motorized shades and selling a couple of them in some key areas, and then hoping on the upgrade sales later on after someone's been someone's experienced with them, I think that those are opportunities again that a lot of integrators who have not delved into the shade market are beginning to realize another place to make money.
Very good. Jamie, when I saw this story come up and I saw that you were on, this was like the perfect marriage for me.
Hey.
When you see this, when you start talking about, things like really design oriented products, right? You and I have talked about this a couple of times. You have to change the way that you market this and the way you sell this and the way you approach the client. How do you do that as somebody who deals with this on a regular basis? But also, how do you kind of take some of those key points and use them in your day-to-day AV business? Because to me, this is the perfect way to continue to transition that sales process.
Certainly. Well, I guess it's kind of a mindset of what company are you? Are you an AV company or are you an integration company? And then to personally define that, I think is very valuable. My guess is that most are AV moving towards integration. I just think that I find a difference personally between someone who's mostly focused on the audiovisual side of the home versus an integrator, which to me looks more holistically at all systems, AV of which is included in that. So how do you change for those who haven't adopted shades as part of their business model? How do you change? Get training and lean on people who know more than you. So one complication I've seen for integrators who adopt shades or buy in, they may send somebody to training to install them, but they don't really send somebody to training to have the conversation of how to sell them. Or they feel uncomfortable in selecting fabrics. And for that reason, they keep it as the thing that they talk about at the very last or the very least because they're not as comfortable with it. So I would encourage you to become educated. Go to window covering certification classes that are outside of your manufacturer training. Hire an interior designer to sell your product. We did it and it was great. And she's no longer with us, unfortunately, but I'm looking for another one. And be open to leaning on people who know more than you. Find a really good fabricator because the person that's making the drapes can give you a lot of really good design advice as well, and possibly even really good leads. As far as how it changes your day-to-day, again, I would say if you're AV leaning towards doing more, you have to really think more holistic. I love what you just said about there's more windows in a house than there are TVs. That's so true. And chances are they're really big windows and they face the south, so they can get all that beautiful sunlight. But guess what's happening? Their house is hot, the floors are getting bleached, and the furniture is as well. So once you understand that education side, I think it's really important in the sales cycle when you're uncovering and you're talking with your client to mention the things that you know. Okay, I see on your plans that you have a lot of southern facing windows. Has anyone talked to you about sun damage or heat gain? And give that back to the client. I think it's a great way to open the door and just make it part of your daily conversation if you're thinking about the house as a whole system.
Very good. I love it. All right, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from our residential systems, Access Networks, and our good friend Haggai Feiner is releasing their ANX series of stackable switches. This is their own line of Access Networks branded switches available to replace some of their core systems, which were a Ruckus product. John, I want to start with you. This is a cool story, one, because if you followed Access Networks, their growth curve has been phenomenal within the channel. It's been really fun to watch what Haggai and his whole team have done. But what's exciting to me about this is that not only are they, essentially OEMing their own switches and products like that, so you now have a rack full of Access Network gear, opposed to some Access Network and then a bunch of not random, but different switches, but they're also handling the pre-configuration and the support side. As we've watched within the industry, networks become not only the backbone, but a very advanced backbone, especially when you start using, stuff like MVX and some of the other incredibly network heavy products. How important is it to have a partner like, in this case, Access Networks, but to be able to outsource a lot of that support and that system configuration design so that you don't have to necessarily do this in-house?
Well, look, I mean, Haggai and the rest of the Access Networks team have done a fantastic job kind of upping the game for the industry for a long time now. They've pushed that best in class. You talked about those different models or different manufacturers' products they used to use. Again, their goal was to pick these best-in-class, enterprise-grade products, right, for the home, and then remove the complication for the dealers, right, by configuring them for them. And now looks like they've consolidated on one series of products with their name on it, and then offering the service and support that goes along with it. And I think that's again that is such a breath of fresh air for our space. And then I think from the dealer's perspective, it's what they really need to deliver in many cases, but don't necessarily have people on staff to do that. And I think what by outsourcing that to a company like Access Networks here, it creates peace of mind for the dealer and then adds value for the end user. So I applaud it, and I think they've done a fantastic job to date, and this just continues to push them forward in that space.
Very good.
Yeah, just to lead off of that, there have been a handful of projects that have come to us, and the timing of, as you know, we have a very good networking person in our company, teaches at CEDIA Expo, et cetera. But there have been times when his bandwidth, pun intended, is so small, or his time is allocated elsewhere, that it helps to lean on companies like Access Networks or whoever is offering that system. And it's helped us in the past. So I think it's great for you to kind of expand your reach, be able to attack a project sometimes by not necessarily having to do it in-house. But certainly a value to have a really good networking person still within your own company and not rely solely on that to be provided, is my opinion, because there'll need to be some conversation and discovery, and then you actually have to plug it in, implement it, and ultimately know what you're doing.
Jimmy, let me ask you this: at what point? And I understand you've got a very good networking individual in the company, but at what point do you have to? I'm trying to parse this correctly, but at what point do you have to go beyond essentially like a residential level networking individual on staff and make that jump to a true commercial? Because this kind of Access Networks Ruckus line of switches is something that I've seen in commercial projects.
Right.
It's something we've used in
grade, right?
enterprise grade.
Yeah.
At what point do you make that? Do you have to make that switch to really good residentially, but somebody who can actually play in that commercial space?
We have a few questions we ask ourselves when we're designing a system. One, does this client have very private data that they need to be careful about? Because some wealthy individuals are completely off the grid. You can't find anything about them. And some are very much in the public eye, and you can Google all kinds of things about them. So that's one question that we ask. Is their data extremely sensitive? And if the answer to that is yes, then enterprise all the way. If the answer to that's no, then let's look at the system. How complex is the system? Are we doing a lot of video over IP? Are we doing really long runs? What's happening here? And again, if it's at a level that we feel is just, maxing out what residential products will do, it's a great time to lean on someone to give you that extra support. And then truly, it's nice whenever it comes, landing in your door pre-configured, and you plug it in and make a couple phone calls to make sure everything works well. That way, that you're doing it right. Again, it's kind of hiring people who are smarter than you to do things that you may not be able to do, and kind of checking your ego at the door a tiny bit and realizing that this is actually a better solution overall. And guess what? You're still delivering it as your company. So it's still you. Whether you had to, bring on $100,000 a year networking specialist or hire it out on occasion, I say hire it out on occasion.
Very good. John, let me come back to you for 1 second, just before we leave this. I've talked with multiple members of the Crestron team over the years at different shows, and ever since you launched MVX, network has been a huge part of that conversation. At what point does a manufacturer have to come back to an integrator and kind of remind them that you're not up to snuff? Because and I don't want to single anyone out, and I don't want to say that this happens just at Crestron. I know this happens at a variety of manufacturers where they sit there and go, yeah, we're dealing with tech support calls because y'all don't know how to configure your networks properly. How do you guys, or how would you manage that?
So it's funny you bring that up, right? I mean, disproportionately, we get more calls from the residential side of our business than we do commercial, right?
You don't say.
I won't tell you the metrics behind that exactly, but it is disproportionate, and generally has to do with things other than Crestron, right? And more commonly has to do with things like the network, right? And so we have published documents about best practices. We have a security policy best practices. We have example configurations for dozens of different manufacturers' Ethernet switches. And, getting that word across to the dealer is still the biggest challenge, right? Trying to get them to understand, hey, where to begin, where they should call in help. I think Jamie's point about, checking your ego and sometimes bringing in someone, someone smarter than you in certain categories, especially regarding networking, is definitely key. The old days of buying the old Linksys, wireless router for $69 and plugging it in, being okay, those are long gone, right? And when you look at the quantity of devices on the network in the typical home these days, and you look at what we're doing with the network, control and video over IP, along with multi-channel audio, right? These are significant bandwidth-consuming devices that require significant setup. So again, all the best practices in the world that we can try and prepare our dealers for still don't always work, right? So it's about getting that message across, providing it education, and letting them know it's okay. It's okay to hire a company like Access Networks, especially when you have some bigger projects, because you can offload some of those things and reduce the risk there.
Are you saying that my WRT 54G is not sufficient? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think it's NVX compliant. I would leave it at that.
Beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's wrap there. Thank you so much for joining us. Jamie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about integration controls, where can they do that?
Absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at ControlSTL, and we're integrationcontrols.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, so feel free to look me up.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. John, my friend, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Crestron and NVX, since we've talked about it a bunch, where can they do that?
Well, Crestron.com, you can learn all about our 4,000 plus products. And then you have my emails, jclancy@Crestron.com.
Excellent. Thank you both for being here. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and pretty much every other social platform. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of Resiweek.